Hello everybody, welcome to another day on lockdown planet Earth. It's day 477, that's right, 477 of lockdown, but don't worry, Alternative Hangouts, we're back to brighten your day, and we still have lots to be happy for, because here in the UK, Freedom Day is only 6 days away. It's only 11 days until your children finish school and you can all go on summer holiday. And it's only 19 months until the Football World Cup, and England can try once again to try and win a major tournament. There we go. So I'm delighted to welcome everybody. But before we get started, shall we thank, please, today's sponsor partners? Hello. So big thank you to LexisNexis. Big thanks to Louisa and the team for supporting today's event. Much appreciated. Okay, for those of you that have joined us before, we like to get the chat function going in Zoom. We like everyone to interact. So I'm going to ask you a question, and I'd like you to pop your answer into the chat function, please. So question is, what is the most fun thing that you've done in the past 2 weeks? So for example, we at Alternative Events, we all met up for the first time this year, and we went to our event hotel where we will be hosting our first live event, Alternative in-house technology event, in October, and you're all invited. Sam, show the slide. And the fun thing that we did at the hotel was we had to do the food and wine tasting. That's right, we had to taste all the food and wine that you'll be drinking to make sure that you only get the best quality when you attend. So that's the fun thing that we did. Thank you, Sam. So pop in the chat function, guys. Who can beat that? Who's had more fun than that in the last 2 weeks? Okay, SK, over to you. Tell everyone how they can get involved.
Yes, hi everybody, and welcome again. As Steve said, this is probably the last hangout that we're doing. It's very exciting. It's been 88, I think, so we've enjoyed it, but really looking forward to seeing you all in person in a few months' time. Meanwhile, for today, it really works great if everybody gets involved. So please do ask questions in the chat, make comments. You can send me a private message if you'd like me to ask a question on your behalf, or you can raise your hand and we'll show you a slide on how to do that on Zoom. You want to look for the reactions icon at the bottom of your screen. If you click on that, you have the option to raise your hand. Then we can see that you want to join in the conversation, and we can bring you into the panel or on screen, just ask a question. So please do get involved. Have a good time. It'll be a fun one today.
Well, indeed. Okay, so we're going to start, guys, with a keynote presentation, and then we're going to follow that with a two-part panel discussion. But let's get started. Let's get started with our keynote presentation, and I'm delighted to welcome Dominique Ashby, the founder at NeuroWork. Dominique is a leading behavioral psychologist and the founder at Neuro at Work, and today's presentation is titled Exploring Your Mindset Around Effectiveness and How to Be More Effective. Dominique, over to you to set the scene for today's session.
Thanks so much. Delighted to be here, everyone. And I just want to explain a little bit about the keynote. I'm not going to be sharing slides, but you will be getting some of the information and access to it afterwards. So the idea is that we can sit back, listen, absorb. It's a lunchtime session, so if you haven't had a chance to get up, stretch your legs, feel free to turn up the volume, do that while you listen to me in my keynote. Your brain will thank you afterwards. And so just without further ado, let's see why that is, and let's start with a baseline. So we will all have had slightly different experiences of our morning so far, slightly different experiences of our week. So there's something that we can do to reset the baseline of our brains so that we're all starting from the same chemical state, the same starting point. And to do that, what I'd like you to do is to bring to mind the last time you laughed. So bring it to mind in as much detail as you can. Was it something that you did, that your family did? Maybe your children maybe made you laugh. Was it something, were you watching TV, listening to a podcast? Whatever it was, bring to mind that memory of laughter in as much detail as possible, and let yourself smile at the memory as well. And that's a really good exercise to be able to help reset our brains into a state that is as productive as possible. And so let's focus in a little bit more on that. What does actually mean a productive brain? Well, it's one that isn't in fight or flight. So our brain's safe mode, essentially. It's one that has a positive neurochemical basis. And we've just done that by bringing to mind a positive memory, in particular one that's made us laugh. So that's reset our brain chemistry to be more positive. And it's also a brain that has as much energy as it needs to perform, because just like our phones, our brains have a set amount of mental energy that they have access to during a day before they need to recharge. And our main recharging center, as we're probably aware, is sleep. So a productive and a happy, positive neurochemical state, and that has enough energy to be able to perform. And when we think about those things, there are a few things that come to mind of modern life and ways that actually could impact that. Things like lack of sleep, lack of hydration, not eating enough. They're all things that will impact our brain and switch it out of that most productive state. Change, ironically, also puts us into a fight or flight state automatically, and it drains up the batteries of our brain far faster. So if you've been feeling a little bit less productive over the past year, possibly a little bit more tired without there necessarily being a specific reason for it, it's probably that your brain has been surviving in a fight or flight mode and draining its batteries a little bit faster because of that. But there's also a couple of parts of modern life that drain our batteries faster and also push us into areas that make our brain slightly less productive. And some of these may resonate with you guys. It's doing more with less, multitasking. So those are a couple of things of modern life that really impact our brain's ability to find that happy state where it's got everything it needs to be productive and effective. And so if we start by taking one of those, which is sort of a pride point for modern life, the I can multitask 100 things at once, aren't I great? And that's something that's really come to the fore over the past 20, 25 years in the workplace, and accelerated even further with all of the introduction of technology, and in particular, our wonderful phones. Now, unfortunately, multitasking is a bit of a myth from a neuroscientific point of view, because we don't necessarily parallel process. We actually just switch the focus of our brains between different tasks. And while we do that, actually we're forcing our brain to reassign some of its energy and focus quickly between different things. And the more you switch between things, the more energy you use up, because your brain has to reorient itself to whatever the new thing is it's doing and park what it had before. And what we found through various studies is that, unfortunately, not only does it make us less productive, so the maths around productivity and multitasking is that if we're trying to juggle two things, we lose about 20% of productivity, three, we lose about 40%, and so on. Overall, we end up being less productive. And so we think that we're doing fantastic things, but actually we are draining our energy and our productive factors more quickly than ordinarily if we just focused on one thing and got through it for as long as we could. And that's also been looked at. I think it's Gloria Mark of the University of California was looking into, well, what's the effect of all this multitasking, this task switching, the context changing that we do during a day. And she's come up with a figure of there being around 23 minutes, 15 seconds that we need to refocus once our concentration has been broken on one thing. So when you think about that over the course of a day, actually you are losing a lot of time thinking that you're being more productive. And there's something about long-term brain health with multitasking as well to know, is that the more we try and force our brain to switch its focused attention between different things, researchers are finding that we end up being less able to focus on one thing for a long time. So we essentially cause ourselves to get into the state of self-interrupting, of flitting automatically. And when we can't focus on something for a long time, actually it impacts our memory. It impacts our cognition. It impacts our ability to make really kind of strong, rational decisions, to be able to focus on a task and see it through to the end. So the more we multitask, the more we're actually breaking our brain for long-term health. So it's something which in modern life, we use it as some sort of amazing, hurrah, I can multitask for 50,000 different things. But actually, we're starting to rethink it. Now the neuroscience is coming out, showing that actually it's not the best way to work today and to keep our brains healthier long term. And the doing more with less thing, what we end up doing is stressing ourselves out. So our brains think, well, we've got to do more with less, which means I've got to work faster. I've got to get through more in a space of a day. And when you think like that, you force your brain to go into a stress response, and you're essentially activating your fight or flight mode. And when you're in that mode, the areas of the brain that are involved in all of the executive functioning, cognition, decision making, again, all of those things that day to day we do in our jobs, and especially when we're in professional services or in legal sector in particular, those get inhibited. So we may be doing things faster, but actually we're doing them to a lesser quality and a lesser effect overall. And that brings me on to kind of the days and the life of the office of someone in the legal sector. So I started off, my first career was in law. And I remember it being private practice was just get through it. Sleep is optional, get through as much as you can. In-house was all about do more with less. And it was about the disruption of digital technology and having to grasp that. And those different contexts are actually having impacts on the brain that mean that we're not going to be giving our highest quality work. So we're trying to do things quicker or with less sleep. And that means that our brain has less attention to give and less quality overall. And we're trying to balance, especially in today's world, that idea of precedent versus innovation, because the pace of the world is changing so quickly these days. And so what we need from our brains isn't just looking back to precedent that used to be quite static and nice to go back to. We need our brains to be coming up with new ideas. And that means it needs to have the energy to do that, because the lower energy that we are in, the more likely it's going to go to the cognitive biases, the cognitive precedents of life. So overall, the idea that we are trying to do more with less, that we're thinking multitasking is something that's fabulous and that's a point of pride rather than necessarily necessity, they're both things that, especially in the legal sector, are going to be impacting the quality and our ability to do our jobs well. But there are things that we can do about that. So first of all, it's not all doom and gloom. It never is in life. So what can we do? The first thing we can do is start to think about our environment and our diaries. So if there's something that you need to focus on, that you really need to get through, whether it's something quite innovative, whether it's something you just need to focus on to review, try and put something in your diary that's at least an hour and use the Pomodoro Technique. It's quite well known. It's 25 minutes of pure focus and 5 minutes of break. That is good for your brain. That's a cycle it likes to do. So if you block out an hour, you can do 2 of those focus cycles. The second thing before you start and sit down your work is to set up your environment. So things like put your phone in another room or in a locker. So studies have shown that if your phone is on your desk or around your person, your brain doesn't stop ever thinking about it, even if you turn off the notifications. So try and put your phone during your Pomodoro hour out somewhere that's away from reach, and your brain will be able to stop thinking about it and use the energy that it's saved in your task. If you can, close all of the open windows, Outlook, IM messaging as well, because digital technology is defaulted to interrupt us. So if you can set up your environment like that, have your Pomodoro hour, that will really help. And as we did earlier, create the power of positive memories, because that floods your brains with really positive neurochemicals that can help you focus, help you be creative, and that when you laugh, automatically take you out of your fight or flight. So you're reactivating all of the executive functions in your brain to help you be the best you can be. And if you can as well, get a cup of tea, maybe a small healthy snack. An apple is fantastic, has been found for the brain health now and tomorrow. Get those set up, because again, there's something that your brain and body automatically needs during that hour of intense focus in particular. So that's it, my 10-minute wrap up from that. I won't go on anymore, but you'll find those tips and some follow-up materials that we share with you afterwards as well.
Dominique, that was fabulous. Thank you very much. I think everybody was nodding in agreement. I'm certainly going to agree with multitasking, taking up the brain power, draining productivity, and affects my memory. I don't know whether that's got anything to do with old age, but definitely memory is definitely suffering with the multitasking. So Dominique has set the scene for everybody listening in today. So what we're now going to do is take this into the working environment, and we're going to build on the conversation, because part 1 of our discussion today is what does it mean to be effective and productive? And Dominique, you've kindly set the scene. So thank you very much for your time. I'm now going to introduce our panelists to have that discussion around what does it mean to be effective and productive. And I'd like to welcome the following. I'd like to welcome Avi Agarwal, who is Head of Legal Domain Architecture at Deutsche Bank. Avi, good to see you. I'd like to welcome Kiran Kelsey, General Counsel at E.ON, welcome to you. Victoria Mee, General Counsel at Aston University, welcome Victoria. And Philip Warren, Head of Legal and Compliance at Cornerstone, welcome Phil. Okay guys, got a tough act to follow there. So we've got the great subject to discuss, which is being effective and productive. Non-tech approaches, that's the key, strategies for developing effectiveness. And Kieran, I'm going to start with you first, please. What are your thoughts on the subject?
It would help if I find the unmute button really quickly. That's a technical issue, and at that point I'll finish talking about technical points. But thanks a lot, Steve. I think the piece that really resonated with me from Dominic's presentation was the less with more, because in-house type teams absolutely constantly get pressurized to do less with more. And I think one of the things we did years ago is to start introducing some self-serve tools for our colleagues to be able to do things themselves, especially if we classified them as low risk. And I know most of you will moan or groan when I say the word NDA, because that was our first project and topic we took and said, well, you can do that all yourself. I have to say the reaction was really surprising. I had the variation from, really? Are you sure we can do this ourselves? I said, yeah, you just follow the guidance note, follow the precedent, and you're absolutely fine. To one of our board members actually querying me and saying, are you sure we can trust our colleagues to do this? And I was like, yeah, they'll be fine. It is really low risk. So there was a lot of reassurance required around the moving from what people assumed was the status quo as I always need to speak to legal about this particular topic, to actually say, no, do it yourself, read the document. This is our guidance note. These are the points where you still need to come and talk to us about. So we were really clear around, look, we're not just leaving you to float completely on your own and we've forgotten you. These are the points in particular, if you're concerned about, come and speak to us. But that took quite a while to get people's mindset to it. I then, after having spent a lot of time getting business colleagues to that stage, realized probably completely by chance that some of my team was still reviewing NDAs. And I was like, how did this happen? So I think the important thing is around, if you are looking at efficiency, productivity piece, don't just look at outside of your team. You need to do the two in parallel. Otherwise, you end up being stuck with having introduced something that half of your organization does and the other half doesn't, and then the two don't add up. It then took us another step to get through that, but we then got there, and we now in very rare cases look at NDAs, and in most cases I just say to people, look, here's the link to our intranet, look at that. If you need to, come back to us. And 9 times out of 10 never hear anything back from them.
Fabulous example. Kieran, thank you. That's great foundation. I mean, you've set the scene there. You've given us a live example. Victoria, can I come to you? What are you thinking about those non-tech approaches and strategies for developing effectiveness? Build on what Kieran's just told us.
Thanks, Steve. I really I understand exactly where Kieran's coming from on this. And it's something that we've been working on as well. I suppose what stood out for me from what Dominique said particularly was about sort of boundary setting, that interruption piece. And I don't know about everybody else, but sort of on the lower tech end, we're an Office 365 organization. We implemented MS Teams like everyone. We scrambled, we were doing some testers, March 2020, we scrambled to introduce. For me, that's become sort of the equivalent of your wander to the water cooler in terms of the MS Teams message. So you'll be working away and then you'll get the, because the green light's on. And if you haven't put that focus time in, and again, Dominique, I really like that you mentioned that and the hour, and that's something I implemented about 6 months ago, and it has been quite transformational, but not least because it introduces the red light. So stop, colleagues, do not approach me as I am working. Do not try to recreate a water cooler moment, which has its place, of course, because we get paralyzed by email, and MS Teams messages and chat have their place. You can have a quick word, But yeah, it has been about navigating that for me and that boundary setting. And I think, Dominique, that's been a fantastic reminder. So thank you.
Fabulous, thank you. And passing the baton to Phil. Phil, what are your thoughts about developing your effectiveness strategies? What have you been considering?
Thanks, Steve. Well, interesting. The point I was going to pick, because I was sort of, I've been trying to think, how would I answer the question? I don't know how I do answer the question, but what I've implemented personally, building on what Victoria's just saying, is that, and also Dominique, about where is my high energy point within the day. So I'm a morning person. So therefore, what I've tried to do is block out time at the start of the day. So it starts at 8 o'clock in the morning and it goes to 9:30, and I block it out, and that's my focus time. So when I've actually got to spend some time thinking about something, or a presentation, or something specific that I need to work on, that's when my energy levels are highest. That's the time where I block it out in the day. I've found that's worked really well, together with blocking out other bits during the day to have breaks. So thinking about my own well-being and making sure I show up as a leader to my team and to other people in the business in the right way. I've found it's important to role model that behavior. So I'm not expecting my team to do anything that I'm not actually doing myself. Not forcing them to do exactly what I do, but to think about how they can manage their time most effectively. And I think as part of that, for them, this year we've introduced, and I think it might even have been on one of these hangout sessions or another one, where somebody introduced this idea of, as well as there being objectives for the team, we've talked about us all having a well-being plan, our own personal well-being plan. What is it that gets people's energy levels up, whether it's walking the dog, whether it's going for a bike ride, just going for a walk, whatever, just having that as part of their daily, weekly routine to help people refresh themselves and ensure they're looking after themselves, as much as in a busy day, in a busy working life, and balancing work and home life, taking time out for themselves. So they're the things we've sort of introduced here at Cornerstone.
Fabulous, thank you. And Avi, coming to you, you're part of a big in-house team at Deutsche. How have you guys worked together on developing effectiveness and boosting all of those positive vibes? What have you come up with at Deutsche?
Yeah, so there are a few examples, and I was really keenly listening to all the examples given by the colleagues. But I think I would like to kind of steer this in a slightly different way. Please. So given the size of DB, Deutsche Bank, and the IT spend that we have, you would imagine that we should have all the kind of productivity tools, efficiency tools, all of that at our hand, which partly is true. But actually, if you look at it, how efficiently we have been using those technology, or how we've been able to use that to the benefit of our personal well-being or the collaboration of the teams, etc., we haven't really done at that scale that we would have liked to. So I'll give an example, right? So I'm quite a fan of the phrase used by Alex in the iManage product team called "bring back the boring." And I think that's something I really am a fan of. And the way I'm trying to position this is that if you think of from a DB point of view, we've got all those tools of efficiencies and then collaboration, etc. But when it comes to as simple things as managing the demand of the legal staff, for example, because we obviously have global staff sitting in multiple places, and we've got demands from NDA to very complex ISTA contract negotiations, etc. So as simple as that, you could have all the technology in the world which lets you kind of do that. But if you do not have as simple things as I want to prioritize what my team or what I am going to pick up in the next week, if you don't have those principles set, then you will end up context switching very, very quickly. And some of those context switching is actually going to be on very critical subjects. Some of them could be litigation matters. Some of them could be very critical subjects that we don't want to kind of lose focus on. So we have introduced some of those best practices in those areas where ignore the tech for a second, but look at what you really want to do and prioritize that stuff. So that's kind of one of the examples I wanted to give.
Fabulous. Thanks, Avi. Well, great start, guys. I really appreciate you giving us a real good scene set there. I'd like to just pause for a moment and now just bring in our audience. We're going to ask everyone a poll question, poll number 1. Sam, if you can just share the poll with our audience. I've got a couple of questions for everyone to review before we go into the next part. So question number 1, how many different technologies, stroke systems, do you use in a day? And you've got a lot of options there. We probably use them all. Zoom, SharePoint, MS Word, contract management systems, bespoke tools. And question 2, what is the primary challenge your legal team may face today? So let's just wait and see what comes out. How many different technology systems do you use in a day? Wow, a lot of people going for 10 plus, 5 to 9, 5 to 9. Wow, 5 to 9 is going to be the winner. That is staggering, isn't it? And that plays to the point Dominique was saying right at the start. We are using way too much technology to be as effective as we want to be. But thank you for backing up what Dominique was saying there in the poll questions. And at the bottom, what is the primary challenge your legal team may face today? What's the winner going to be? The winner's going to be the last one, which is communication with the wider business isn't as effective as it could be. How many times have we heard that within the in-house environment? So the polls are backing up what we probably knew, which are already fabulous. Okay, we're just going to pause the polls now. Thank you, Sam. Okay, let's move into the next part of our discussion, which is going to be around the following subject: leveraging technology to optimize efficiency, collaboration, and effectiveness. This is the part of the discussion where our panelists will share how they have selected the tech and tools to boost effectiveness within the legal team and how they overcame any barriers to implementation. And Avi, I'm going to start with you on that one, please.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, sure. So I would like to first mention that if you look at your retail app stores that you have on your phone, they're primarily moving towards solving very isolated and individual problems. You can think of it, you've got an app for everything. So I've got a very individual problem, there will be an app for it. But you flip it when it comes to enterprise product landscape. So all the enterprise applications and the product landscape in there is moving towards a kind of platform or domain level platforms. So examples would be your HR platform for Workday, your Salesforce for your client lifecycle management, and your Office 365 for your productivity. So the enterprise apps are moving towards platforms, even though the other retail side is still sticking to one problem at a time. So the way we have looked at it is to leverage technology at a platform level. So the platform then by default is something where your legal processes are stitched together from a user experience point of view, from a front to back data flows point of view, and gives you some seamless integration. Now, all of these points kind of go back to what Dominic was saying. So if you do have a platform view of your process, then you're not going in and out of multiple technologies, but you might need to change interfaces, but you're having a consistent view of what you want to do in the context of the things that you want to do. So that's how we kind of initially want to look at when we think about leveraging technology for solving kind of legal business problems. By default, some of these technologies would increase collaboration. It would increase collaboration between the staff. It will also increase it with your external counsels and then kind of other external parties. And we also reduce your switching of disjoint systems. So when you've got a platform concept in your IT, you don't have your disjoint systems where you have to do one thing in one place and then have to go somewhere else, find another place to do your second part of that same process. So that's the kind of approach we've taken. Just one quick point about the implementation side of it, and I know Dominic mentioned that as well briefly. It's a very obvious thing to say, and then sometimes it's easier said than done. But we've recently done a very large global change program, and one of the key success criteria, I would say, that we found coming out of that was not necessarily our training and the user kind of information side of it, but the fact that we were able to find champions who were passionate about that technology solving a certain business problem in all the regions that we were rolling out those systems onto. So that was a key differentiating factor. We call them champions. They're sort of change champions from a traditional change management speak point of view. But that was a tremendous kind of difference in rolling out and the user acceptance of that technology. I'll pause there. But yeah, that was an experience.
That was a great start, great example. Thanks, Avi. And just listening and thinking about our audience and using the chat function, we're talking about technology here, but we're linking effectiveness and technologies together. So to the chat function, how are you using technology to boost effectiveness in your legal team? Pop it in the chat function and we'll see what the audience thinks. Phil, can I come to you next? What's your thoughts about part 2 of our discussion?
I've got lots of thoughts on this, Steve. We could be here for a long time, but I won't. I'll keep it short because Victoria and Kieran should be giving their views as well. I think for me, we've done quite a lot in this space over the last 18 months, 2 years, and all driven by trying to solve problems or challenges that we had. And I think that's always the starting point to all of this legal technology is there a problem you need to fix first of all? And if there is a problem, then can technology provide a solution? I mean, for us, the 3 biggest ones that we needed to tackle were the sort of visibility of and monitoring of our legal spend, the management of our work. We have thousands of legal instructions out with external firms that we need to monitor, and to improve our corporate governance and the way in which we manage our interaction with the board. And in each of those 3 cases, we've gone out to the market, we've tested products, we've spent time and effort understanding what's out there, and also along the way got support from senior management in the business to demonstrate what value we think these tools can add. And I think each of those platforms that we've introduced is at a different stage of bedding into the business, and they're all providing that value. The challenge, I think, is around continuing to demonstrate to the CFO and the CEO that this stuff washes its face, right, and that there's actually some tangible measures that you can grab hold of, as well as the slightly fluffier metrics of improving productivity and generally giving people better access to information. One final point I would make on implementation is, I think what I've learned is be prepared for the journey, because as with all technology, you've got people who move at different speeds with it. So, there are a few people in my team that Avi was talking about who I would see as the real early adopters. They love it, they get on with it, they really champion it, and others take a little bit longer. So that sort of constant reinforcement communication, because it does take time ultimately to change people's behavior and get them to use this stuff, but it's certainly adding huge value to us.
Fabulous. Good to hear. Victoria, coming to you next. What are your thoughts on the tech piece?
Well, again, as you know, Steve, I've been pretty busy in this area, and I certainly recognize what Avi talks about when you talk about user experience. Avi, you talk about getting the right platforms, and that's absolutely it, isn't it? Whilst we need to align to the enterprise tech as far as is appropriate and possible, there are areas where once we've done our work, it's apparent that we need to bring in something new and different. So I suppose, how would I demonstrate this to you now with 3 specific examples? So we've done, I've led a project to significantly improve our governance at the university. We have a brand new policy infrastructure that I've led and launched, and that has been entirely aligned to our appropriate platform. So as I said, Office 365, we've got a bespoke SharePoint site that we've built, and we've got it all metadata tagged. Colleagues can subscribe, they can get the latest policies. I appreciate in this group, we might find that exciting. Believe it or not, others struggle with it, but I've managed to sell it because these are the principles on which we do business, and it enables my colleagues to be able to share where we are and do these things more quickly and engage more effectively with the outside parties. So that's been fantastic. But it's not just leveraging the enterprise tech, it's about new tech where appropriate. So undertook a very significant procurement for a sole supplier. There was a requirement for a bespoke sort of variation on the HiQ platform that Pinson's delivered to us. And as has already been touched on, if you can monitor it, you can manage it, you can deliver those reports, and that's what the C-suite want to see. And that's fantastic. And then we've leveraged that relationship to move on to doing all our automated templates as well. So there is a very clear direction of travel. Again, as Phil said, it's about the journey. People will come through very strong, very early, and it's about carrying everyone through. And there's been quite a lot of work on a comms plan, and we still do that. But yeah, it's just so much to do. It's just
You've done
it's
a
such
lot
an exciting space.
In the 18 months since I've last seen you. Wow, congratulations.
Indeed.
Fabulous.
Thanks,
Kieran, coming to you next. What are your thoughts in summarising what the guys have said and building on their feedback?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of points that I think I thought of around that whole context about tech and efficiency. I think the first one is picking up on the point Victoria mentioned about sole supplier, but also Phil mentioned around legal spend and being able to track it. And I think just one bit of experience that we've had, because we've had a sole supply arrangement for 7 years now, and the MI you can get out of it is absolutely brilliant, but you will only get out of it if you have input the right data fields at the outset. If you haven't got those, you won't be able to pull off, for example, what is the spend of that particular business area, or how much do we spend on property work, unless you've got that in your data fields originally. And if, like our organisation, reorganise on a regular basis, make sure you keep that up to date, because if you leave that for too long, then your data is no longer aligned with what you need it to be. So that was the first point I was going to mention. And I think the second one, again, just something to watch out for. We have started using our intranet, which is on a separate platform, to put a lot of our guidance notes and how to do things on. When I looked at it, and probably one of the advantages of lockdown is you suddenly got that commute time back. So I looked at our intranet page for the legal team. It was dull as dishwater. Literally every single item started with guidance note. And then you had to click onto it to actually work out what the guidance note was about. I struggled with it. So we completely revamped it, and the tools are all there. But basically, we put tiles onto it, made it much more user-friendly. So now you can actually see, oh, how do I get a document signed? How do I do this? How do I? And actually, it's made it very much more user-friendly, and people now can go onto it and actually find stuff straight away. So that's an easy piece of tech that most organizations will have, but I'm not sure in-house teams necessarily spot or think they have it because they've got all the guidance notes on there. But have a look yourself at what it looks like as a user and whether you enjoy the user experience. Because I looked at ours about a year and a bit ago and thought, oh, even I can't find anything. So have a look at that piece. That was all I was going to add.
Well, it's a great discussion. I mean, you're all very passionate about what you've achieved, both with the effectiveness and the technology, and that's coming across. And I'm hoping we're giving some guidance there. I love Jack Patrick's comment about, no, that's why I'm here, to try, and hopefully, Jack, we're helping you out. But we have hit a milestone. 37 minutes have passed, and something extraordinary is going to happen. Sam, play the video. Here's the video. There it is. It's going to play. There we go. The bell is ringing. So here at Alternative Events, we're called Alternative Events after all, we're going to pause the discussion. And this is in keeping with the theme for today. LexisNexis have asked us to stop the content after 37 minutes as a result of the context switching mindset. And as a result, we've just given you back 23 minutes of your life, because the event was going to last an hour. So the question is, what are you going to do with the 23 minutes of free time that we've just given you? Well, I hope you stay with us. But to explain this concept even further, I'm delighted to welcome Louisa van Eden-Schmidt from LexisNexis. Lou, over to you. Tell everybody.
Hi, Steve, and thank you so much. Just quickly to firstly say a big thank you to our speakers for sharing your invaluable practical advice today, and Steve for excellent hosting as always. It's such a privilege to be involved in this alternative community. So Steve just shared, we're particularly excited to bring to life some of the concepts discussed today. We heard earlier from Dominique that the negative impact that context switching can have, and research showing you that you can lose an average of 23 minutes when switching between tools. And we've also heard from Avi about the benefits of platform approach to enterprise tech. So imagine if you could get back that 23 minutes. Well, I'm excited to tell you the great news is you can. So Lexis Create is our latest product release, and it allows you to build, check, and complete your legal documents without ever leaving Microsoft Word and disrupting your workflow. From the ability to find and reuse clauses you and your colleagues have already written and inserting these with just one click, to automatically checking the legal status of citations with built-in calculators and proofreading to detect inconsistencies in definitions, numbering, and formatting to reduce risk. We've even built in digital signatures and the ability to redact sensitive information all in one place, again, without you ever having to leave Word. Are you intrigued? I certainly hope so. And this being an alternative event, we wanted to do things a little differently. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague Layla to bring this product to life for you. Please do use the chat to ask any questions as she takes you through a very short preview of how Lexis Create can help you win back valuable time and work smarter.
Thank you, Lou. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. My name's Layla. I'm a product specialist at LexisNexis, and I'm here today to talk to you about Lexis Create. So really excited to tell you about this product. So I'm just going to share my screen with you. Fantastic. Okay, so as mentioned before, Lexis Create is an additional toolbar in Word, which allows for creating, sharing, and reviewing legal documents. Now, please do use, I forget what they're called, the emoticons, to let me know what you're thinking about what I'm showing you. Show your appreciation. Let me know if you like what you see or if you don't like what you see at all. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to limit that context switching, that pain point that's been brought to life a few times in this conversation so far. So once it's downloaded into Microsoft Word, you will just be able to open it just by clicking on the icon at the top here. So I've got an agreement up at the moment just for demonstration purposes, but you might have a blank page up, you might have any document up. As long as it's in Microsoft Word, Lexis Create can work for you. So I've opened it to the side. You can see it's clean, it's intuitive with limited noise. So we've really taken into consideration the Microsoft design principles here and worked alongside them just to make it easier to use so you don't feel like you need to learn a new platform, which again was another pain point that was brought to life. So you've got your three main tabs at the side here of build, check, and complete, which just mirrors that document drafting process clearly. And you can jump in at any point that you wish to as well. Now, the content section, so this is a really good place to come into. You might want to pull in a clause that you use quite often into the document, or it might be a useful paragraph from a letter or a statement. Or you might want to link through to the information from Lexis PSL. And that, again, can all be done within Microsoft Word. So we've pulled all that content here. I can search the information I need, or I can use my drop downs just to the side here. I'm just going to pop into PSL precedents. So again, all that information from Lexis PSL is pulled into Microsoft Word. I'm not leaving my focus from where I am. So I'm just going to run a search for contract, just as an example. The Elasticsearch tool searches the heading and the content of the document to bring back the most relevant results, as you can see here. So it's just highlighted what you want to look at. I'm just going to scroll down to one where we can read more. So again, not leaving Microsoft Word. If I had a blank page and I decided I wanted to work from this particular precedent that's going to open up, then I would be able to just click on insert, and anywhere my cursor sits, so I'll just scroll down, click on insert, anywhere my cursor sits on that blank page, that information will just pull through for you to work from. Or I could just click on open, and it would just open out into a new tab in my web browser. So it's just hiding up there. See if I can drag that down. The joys of technology. Here we go. Can't seem to get to it, but it does just open out into the exact page within Lexis PSL. So you're not having to log out and log back in and begin that research from scratch. It just seamlessly takes you through. Now, I have no idea how I'm going to get rid of that. So let me just try to do that. There we go. Okay. Now, with your snippets, so if I had clauses, you might have that file where you've got all your clause bank put together, but with you having to wear so many hats, there's probably loads of clauses that you need to source. Whereas here, you can bank all that in specific areas, in specific practice areas, and just make it easier to find and easy to incorporate it into the document as well. Now, I know I do have an agreement here, but I've just brought up this company car clause, which is an employment clause. But if I wanted to include that in the document, I would just scroll down to where I want to include that, make some space, and then click on insert. And as simple as that, that information is then brought into the document with one click of a button. Now, alternatively, if I had drafted a clause and I felt like it would be beneficial for myself going forward or for the wider team, so encouraging that collaboration again, I would just be able to highlight and then click on Add Snippet, and that pulls that into a form here on the right-hand side, so I can fill in the information and save that information within Lexis Create. But it's all stored and encrypted. You're not going to see those clauses end up on LexisNexis a couple of months down the line. It's very much for yourselves to use going forward. Any questions so far? Does anyone feel like that would be quite handy and that would eliminate any pain points with having to source clauses or pull in information to documents? Please do unmute yourself and let me know, or pop it in the chat. You're gone very quiet. I'm hoping I've stunned you all with silence and your jaws are on the floor.
Layla.
Yeah.
It's fabulous. Carry on, you're doing great.
Fantastic. Now, we've also brought through our calculators. So just quick overview of that. Most popularly used calculators in Lexis PSL, again, pulled through into Lexis Create, just so you can mitigate that risk of any errors creeping into the document. So really easy to use there. Now, your second tab just here on the right-hand side is your check option. So again, we do get fatigued looking at screens day in, day out, multiple documents day in, day out. And most things that we would usually pick up can sometimes slip by the net. Whereas here, you've got a second pair of eyes just looking over your back just to say, hey, just have a look at this bit, or hey, just have a look at this bit. So our document has been proofread and all those items have been pulled into these three main headers here to the right-hand side. Now the Analyze header has all those potential legal items you might want to have a look at. So just at top level, we've got incomplete information. So if you're repurposing documents, you don't want any blank information going out the door, because that's not going to look great on you. And it's not a great use of your time to ensure that those blank items aren't filled in. So this will just bring that to your attention so you can make the changes that are required. So I'm just going to click on this tile here. So I've got unreasonably. And then when I click on that, that just takes me to where that sits in the document. I'm not having to scroll to find it. So I could go into the document to make that change, or I could just do it via the text box within Lexis Create just here. So I'm just going to type in test. And then that will just update in the document like so. It's got it in bold because it's picked up the surrounding formatting too. Anything that's changed just falls into the checklist, and I can filter down if I have time restraints as well, just to focus in on those as well. Definition issues, used before defined, not found, not used. All that can be listed here just so you ensure that nothing's been included in that document that should not be there. Citations, really positive feedback from this particular area, because again, sometimes you're updating documents and again, you're wearing so many hats that that process can become overwhelming, whereas Lexis Create can help you with that. So it's going to check all your legal citations within the document against our Lexis library database to give you the consolidated status, so you know whether it's in force, no longer in force, or partly in force. And again, if I did need to do any further research around that, I can open that page out into Lexis library, and it will take me directly into that page. So I'm not having to begin that research from scratch. So I can see what it was repealed by. And if I can move this across, I can see all the supporting documentation as well. Don't want to close the wrong window, so I'll just do that. So I'm just going to go back. Any questions so far? Does that citations feature look like it would be quite useful?
I was going to say later that everyone's muted on the call, so the chat function is the option for people to post comments.
Perfect.
Just so you're aware, the chat function is your way of getting the feedback.
I do use those emoticons as well. Any cross-referencing issues? I know this is a feature within Microsoft Word, but it can be quite clunky. So here we're just ensuring that you can assign a location to a reference if needed quite quickly and easily without having to stress yourself out with trying to learn that feature within Microsoft Word. And any mismatch information as well. So here we've got 100, but we've written 1000, something that can be easily done, but then in the same vein, easily missed as well. So here you can ensure that you can check that and make the correction where needed to. Now we also have the review section. So this is where that key bespoke data is going to be kept. So you've got your negotiable amounts, for example. So a quick check can be done just to ensure that the amount that is shown is the correct amount. Any identifiable information will be listed here too, and any spelling mistakes should pop out at you from this list. So you can ensure that nothing is being included in the document that shouldn't be there, or nothing is misspelled. So things like companies, locations, addresses, names, that will all be listed here. And this is a great space as well to revert a document back to template status. So it saves you time in that instance too. So here we can identify that ABC Limited is a company name. We have that suggestion in the text box. And if I click on replace, then that's just reverted back to placeholder within the document. Any dates and times are listed here too. So on the property side of things, if you've got completion dates or anything like that, a quick check can be done just to ensure that the date that is shown is correct and it falls on a weekday if needs be as well. And then finally in this section, we've got the refined area. So this is those items that wouldn't necessarily have a legal impact, but which will make the document easy to read or read as it should. So anything with formatting, you might have an open bracket in those closed brackets, that will be picked up there. Any numbering issues, so duplicate numbers or anything like that, all your recognized terms would sit here too. And then inclusive language is something that we've included as well. So this is a fairly new feature. So we launched the product in April on the 6th. And about 2 weeks ago, it came to light that gender is something that would need to be picked up within documents so that it could be made to a more neutral term. And within those 2 weeks, we've now included that within the product. So that's how quickly we are listening to those that are using it, just to ensure that it works for you as it should. So things like he, policeman, fireman, that would be picked up here, so you can make that change that is necessary.
Fabulous. That's a great overview. Thanks, Layla.
No, that's fine. There is a last bit, but if you...
Please share the last point. I'm keen to give everyone in the context switching concept their free time back to have a cup of tea before their 2 o'clock Zoom call, which is probably their next one.
Okay.
Are you going to do one more quick feature? And
then yes, sorry, yes. So lastly,
and then we'll let everyone have a cup of tea and finish early.
Okay, I thought you let them go now because I was rattling on. So we've got the complete section. So here we've got Redact, Report, Finalize, and Docusign. The Redact feature is a black line. You can be ensured that the information that is removed is completely removed and will not be able to be pulled back. And once again, all that PII will be listed, so you can select what you want to remove, or you can use our Redact pen for registered numbers or passport numbers or anything like that. Sorry, my internet is being a little slow at the moment. It's probably because I'm on a call with 55 people. So I do apologize. Yeah, I won't let that run.
Okay.
So I'll just go back, and then you do link through to Docusign. So if you are using a Docusign subscription to add signatures to your document, instead of having to save that document on your desktop and then open out Docusign to pull that document through, here we create a bridge so that it just eliminates that step, so you can add and request signatures to the document as well.
Fabulous, Layla. Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed that. I love the way you interact with Docusign as well. I think that's a real added bonus. And I'm sure that to Louisa and Layla afterwards, if people want to ask further questions, please contact us at the Alternative team. You've got our email addresses because you've kindly accepted the invite today. We can then make introductions and the follow-up can continue. So Layla, thank you very much. And everybody, in the principle of finishing early and context switching, we're going to give you the last 5 minutes back. But before we go, I need to thank some people. I need to thank our fabulous speakers. Dominique, a fabulous keynote, set the scene perfectly. Thank you very much. To Avi, to Kieran, to Victoria and Phil. As always, guys, I really appreciate your support. And of course, we need to thank LexisNexis for today. Thank you to Lou. Thank you for your time, and to Layla for the super presentation. And SK, we will see everyone at an event, hopefully, very soon.
Yes, 4th and 5th of October.
You're all invited.
By the water. Please come
invited.
along.
And just go to alternativeevents.co.uk. You can see where we're hosting our event, because we've done the wine and food tasting for you. It's going to be good, as I said.
Absolutely, we can guarantee it.
Absolutely. We're going to stay on, by the way. SK and I, as always, we stay on at our hangout. Some of the speakers may stay with us. I'm sure Alexis will stay with us. If you want to stay and ask further questions, stay on. We can stay and chat for as long as you like. In the meantime, stay well. Enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks for joining us.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone.